Welcome to Small Talk by Sfarim Chatter. I'm Nachi Weinstein. On this episode of Small Talk, I'm going to be joined by Rabbi Mann, who is Dayan and staff member at Eretz Chemda Machon and Kol, and he's the author and editor of A Glimpse at Greatness, a study in the works of giants of Lumdus, halachic analysis, including short biographies of the featured authors and an introduction to Lumdus, published by Eretz Chemda Institute. This was actually published a number of years ago, but it was out of print for a while. Now it's back in print, widely available, so we'll be discussing this book. So thank you, Rabbi Mann, for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Nachi.
First off, I want to mention that this episode is being sponsored by the Rare and Affordable Sfarim WhatsApp group, which is, for anyone listening who is constantly on the hunt for rare finds, everyday staples, or just a truly fascinating selection of books. You really should join this group. It's a great way to see what's hitting the market in real time, and there'll be a link in the show notes where you can join the group. Also sponsored by kosherclaf.com, which is a fantastic resource for high-quality Sefer Torah, Tefillin, Mezuzahs, Megillas, and Pitim Keteres. They carry all ksavim, and most importantly, they make it very easy to understand the different levels of quality you're looking at. Right now, they're offering free shipping to all Sfarim Chatter listeners for the next 2 months. Just use coupon code SFARIM Chatter, SEFORIMCHATTER at checkout. And you can also reach them by phone at 516-737-5436. And if you call, make sure to tell them that you heard them on the podcast. And then also, all the information is in the show notes. Okay, so let's turn to A Glimpse at Greatness. What can you tell listeners about this book?
Well, it's a sefer I wrote in English, which is an introduction to people who mainly dream audiences, people who have have had very little exposure to high-level Torah learning, and take a topic like Lumdus, which is usually for experts, people who've been learning for many years, and try to explain to people who are not initiated or missed the boat when they were in day school and they were in high school. They didn't really appreciate it. Now, when they're a little bit older, to get them to appreciate what the world of Lumdus is. They don't have the textual skills, they don't have the background necessarily to understand what's the logic behind understanding a sugya, and to, I wouldn't say spoon feed it, because it's, even with my best efforts, it still requires real concentration, but to make it available to such people to see what's going on in what we call the world of yeshivas, we call the world of Lumdus.
What was that like, translating it from Hebrew to English? I don't mean translating, just like literally translating. Obviously, you adapted, you translated.
Right.
How does it actually play out when you go from Hebrew to English trying to teach people basics of Lumdus?
Right. So I took 16 sugyas from 4 different Sfarim, and I do a lot of learning, but at least I try. But I consider myself in my essence to be a teacher. So I sort of picture a class and I explain, again, not translate, but go through a piece and step by step get the people ready to understand this step and get ready for the next step. Methodologically, what's happening from one step to the other, from the question to the answer, to the proof, to the nafkaminas, to try to appreciate, to understand what's going on. And that's something, again, I always enjoyed teaching. And the translating comes along. Most of my teaching, I guess, has been in English from the Hebrew and Aramaic sources. But that's the way I hope the work reads, as a careful teacher.
So you focused on, as you said, 4 Sfarim, which are the Machane Ephraim, the Ktsois, the Rekiv Eger, Minchas Chinuch, some of the classical Sfarim of Lumdus, but there are many other Sfarim, those familiar being in Yeshiva, many other Lumdus Sfarim that are not in here. So why did you pick these 4 Sfarim?
Right. It's a little bit hard, which ones to pick. Maybe the simplest one to pick maybe is the Minchas Chinuch, who has the most fascinating, interesting discussions. You can pick on almost any page something which could go over in the system and this format, and try to expose people to the logic that's going on. Maybe another somewhat logical one, the obvious one, is the Ksos HaChoshen, who is a master pedagogue. I mean, he's talking about Shulchan Aruch, trying to explain halachos in the Shulchan Aruch, but his mastery of pedagogy is just beautiful, the way presents an idea and proves it and introduces is that also a sort of a slam dunk type of choice. The other two that I picked were Rabbi Akiva Eger, perhaps because it was hard to find pieces because he's a little bit more technical than the Minchas Chinuch and the Ksos, but he's such a legendary gadol, and I have biographies, which I guess we'll get to, and through it you see some, why he's such a legend in the Tkufa the Achronim. I thought I'd go the extra mile to find pieces in which I could present his greatness. And the other one, the Machne Ephraim, was a sefer that when I was younger, I read many years in yeshiva, I had heard about, but I didn't realize what if I can use the Yiddish term, what a geschmack sefer it is that people just don't know about. So, to present to the world, including maybe those who do have more background, the godless and the fascinating pieces that there are in the Machne Ephraim.
So you mentioned the biographies. I think that's something we should discuss because although this is a sefer focused on Lumdis and giving over Lumdis in English, you did include biographies because you focused on 4 Sfarim rather than just topically. You didn't do this topically. So why did you include these biographies and kind of what's included in these short biographies before you discuss each sefer?
Right. So perhaps it's a little bit historical, biographically about me. When I guess I got started getting more serious about learning in 16, 17. At age 19, older chavrusa might have given me a sefer called Ishin Veshitos by Rav Zevin, where he goes through about 10 or so gedolim and tells you about their learning and about them. And I just fell in love with the sefer, and I fell more in love with the world of learning through that sefer. And to me, that goes together. You want to get on a little bit of a taste of something, get to taste the intellect, the learning, and get a little bit about the person, about his style, a little bit about his history, about his family, etc. So from that point on, it was sort of a labor of love that I love the Gdolim that I learn. I feel connected to them. And maybe some people just would be interested in the intellectual part, but those who are like me had a sort of romantic connection to these individuals, these personas, in addition to their Sfarim, that they can enjoy that as well. If somebody wants to skip over it, fine. Each one is about 10 pages about each one of the Gedolim.
You start off with an intro to Lumdis.
Yeah, well, since this is written to bring the uninitiated aboard, so they need to understand a little bit, or most of them will probably want to see a little bit, what is this? What am I getting myself into? What is this topic called Lumdis? So I tried to explain it pedagogically. I used a couple of mishalim, different types of Lumdis. For example, what we call the world of Pilpul. I compared, not wanting to detract from its importance, but conceptually compared to a chess game, where there are all sorts of moving parts, and you move one thing and it impact on that. If you hold this way, then you hold that, and that causes this. Chain effect to see how one thing brings another. And I go along the way, I kept on giving different mishalim, different allegories to the idea, what a chakir is and what an afkamin is. So I imagine most of my readers are quite familiar with democracies and probably grew up, as I did, that, believing that democracy is the best system. And try to think, well, what is it about democracy that makes it better? So classic chakira, a dilemma would be, is it because it gets better results or because the process is more fair? And then, so that would be, it's a concept everyone knows about. Introduction say, okay, you want to analyze that which to you is obvious, but why is it obvious? What makes it tick? And what would be an afkamina? For example, if it's result-oriented, so if I was sure I had a king who would do a better job than a democracy, then if it's a result, the important thing is the result, then pick the king. If it's more the process, it's not fair that one person should decide, then it could be as worthwhile, even if the results are not as good. So I have different mishalim along the way to try to explain to the person, understand what are we entering? What is this field of Lamdus? Why do people do it? Where does it come up? How is it different from halacha l'maaseh? How does this go hand in hand with halacha l'maaseh?
Let's talk about examples. We mentioned Force Farm. Obviously, this is small talk. We're not going to go through an example from each one.
Right.
And for those interested, there'll be a link to purchase the book in the show notes. But perhaps just one example to illustrate how you illustrate Lamdus in English.
Okay, so I picked one of the 4 pieces I picked from the Minchas Chinuch is about the topic we all know about, bris milah. And we all have been to bris milahs, and we know it's, the father is involved over there. And he gives the charge to the mohel. So the Minchas Chinuch has a question as to what happens if, for whatever reason, a child did not have a bris milah, and now he's an adult, a young adult, an older adult, and his father's still alive. Whose mitzvah is it? Is it the mitzvah of the father, as it always was, or is it the mitzvah of the baby? I'm sorry, the baby. He was the baby. Now he's the young adult or the older adult. Which is it? So, there is a nafkamina halacha l'maaseh. Who should be doing it? Who should be paying for it? Who has the right to decide in the mohel? But it gets to the basis of a very simple question. Why is it that the father is responsible for the bris milah? Is because something about the generation to generation? Is something deep and philosophical the father does it? Or is it just technical? It's just like most babies who are 8 years old cannot arrange their own bris. So the father does it. But really, the nature of the mitzvah devolves on the person. And if he's old enough to do it himself, then the responsibility and the rights go over to him. So we go through the sources, the proofs, the discussion of the Rambam, the discussion of Tosfos and Kiddushin. There's a nice proof from there. And each one is explained, and you get to see the different strengths and weaknesses of the 2 possibilities as it develops.
So one thing I want to clarify is you mentioned we talk about translation, adaptation. So each piece, are you taking the Hebrew? Are you completely rewriting it? Is it an adaptation? Is it a translation?
It's it's all in English, but parts of it are a translation, but the overall structure is adaptation. Okay, maybe if you quote, if I do a piece of L'Ktzos HaChoshen, so I'm going to adapt him. I'm not going to translate him. If he quotes a Rambam, the Rambam might be quoted, word for word, a 8 or 9 or 10 word quote.
Who is your book meant for?
Great. So I have different people. I think most people came out about 13 years ago. I think of most of the people who have read it are probably not my dream audience. They're people who enjoy learning. And you know what? It's an interesting topic. And it's a little bit easier if it's in English and explained carefully, except instead of my breaking my teeth on the language and the concepts. So those are people, they enjoying. That's fine with me. My dream, people really, I guess you could say 2 basic parts. One is somebody who went to day school, to high school, yeshiva tana, whatever the case might be, and didn't appreciate it then. He wasn't there. And, the Rabbi is saying this thing, I don't know what he's talking about. Just hard enough for me to understand what the Gemara means. Now he's starting to go to what's also Pipulim or all sorts of deeper and deeper. And they get a little bit older and their intellect develops. Maybe they're on a college campus and they, become more intellectually aware. And then to come back and say, you know what? Let me take a look again. Maybe I can really enjoy it. Now, they're not ready to do it by themselves. But this could be a stepping ground. And perhaps one of the happiest moments in my teaching career is I had a colleague who had been a JLIC rabbi on the campus. And he said he had a chavrusa with some kids from the book. We didn't know each other at the time. And one of the kids enjoyed it so much that after college, he decided to go to smicha. So that was about as exciting a moment. He didn't appreciate it at all in high school. And now he was four years older, and he got excited by, in other words, the Sefer made him aware that the topic is really something that he can appreciate now, and he wanted to go back into learning. The other is people who have never been in yeshiva, never been in a high-level shiur, maybe never been any shiur. Maybe they've been a rabbi's sermon, and they don't get what's going on in yeshiva. They see pictures of yeshiva, and they just don't understand. They think, oh, they're doing something religious. They're saying these. They don't understand that what's going on in a top yeshiva is intellectually, in my opinion, more deep and more challenging than what happens in the greatest universities in the world. So, I don't think I would say that the reason I learn lamdis or halach or anything is because the intellectual part, but people should realize that it's really, really deep and something that they should appreciate if they haven't yet appreciated what there is in their Jewish tradition that's going on, that they should appreciate it instead of perhaps they have a nephew or a cousin who decided they became frum and to start go to yeshiva, and they can't understand. He could have been a great mathematician. He could have been a great this. He could have been a great that. What's he wasting his time? Besides the mitzvah element, we're certainly not wasting the time. Intellectual element also is just if not much more intellectually stimulating and deep as anything that exists out there. So that would be another audience, dream audience. And if somebody is listening and they know what's going on in Sfarim, which I imagine people here for the very, very most part understand, if you have a cousin like that, if you have a neighbor like that who just doesn't get it, what in the world are they doing yeshivas? Maybe you can convince them to look, to read it, concentrate on it, because they won't understand just reading like a novel, and to get a new appreciation.
So I usually end off with, what are you trying to accomplish with this book? But I think you just explained very well what you're trying to accomplish. So I'll link in the show notes for those interested in purchasing the book. You can check it out. Like I said, now it'll be widely available. And thank you, Rabbi Mann, for joining me to discuss.
Thank you very much, Nachi. Thanks for all your work.